This last Saturday, there was an attempted assassination attempt on former President Trump. And there are three predominant theories about how and why this occurred. First being a lone wolf, second being an enemy of Trump, third being like an inside job deep state action. And I'm going to talk about which of them it was. So on the left here, as you look at this, a lot of stuff written on this board. I'll explain a little bit. We're going to get a little philosophical. There's three kind of predominant razors that I want people, rules of thumb that I want to have in the forefront of your mind as we talk through this. Occam's razor, explaining the thing, making no more assumptions than should be made than are necessary. I just want to go off of the facts that we have and the evidence that we know to make the best kind of decision we can with the information that we have. Another is Hitchens' razor. What can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, which is why I just want to focus on the things that we know and the evidence that we have currently. And then the last, which I think is really important, is Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. And that's going to lead us into this spectrum, this continuum right here. On the far left side, we have what we saw on Saturday. We saw negligent, stupid, incompetent. We saw careless. We saw reckless. There's no doubt that you can look at that security detail and the plan and not be like, that was the worst display of what should be the most elite security force on the planet, the best protection detail, the leader of the free world, our president, and now the nominee from the Republican Party, President Trump. Those are the two people that one of those two people will be president in January. And that security detail could not have been more sloppy, could not have been less prepared, more inept, and completely inadequate to do the job. And on the far right of the spectrum, if you have stupid and incompetent, careless and sloppiness, you have complicit in collusion, involved in cahoots and scheming. Now, this seems to be like a very far apart thing. But in law, legally, if you are so negligent, especially if you're knowingly like negligent, you're supposed to be doing a job, but you aren't doing the job or can't do the job, you're ill-equipped to do the job, you are liable for the actions that you should have taken but didn't take. And that's where these things actually end up getting very, very close. Now, let's say there are people that are incredibly competent, that know better, that know the job and know how to do it, but then it didn't get done. If those people, like a director of a department like Homeland Security or Secret Service, they know how it's supposed to be done. If you look at the security detail that just happened at the Republican National Convention, you saw giants. You saw the most professional, the most capable people surrounding President Trump. I was just in France with President Biden and his security team. Man, I met these guys and I was blown away by how professional they were, how well they knew their job, and how the opposite of this that they were. So if these are our kind of three options here, like lone wolf, enemy of Trump, or an inside job, are these mutually exclusive things? Now, when you look, let's explain how this security team, this security detail was so pathetically inept. Obviously, the building that shooter climbed up on. He's a 20-year-old boy. This is a lot of questions around that, and I don't know. We don't know the information yet. There's a big space of time that we don't know a lot about him from the time that he graduated high school until he climbed up on a roof and tried to assassinate a former president. During those 2 years, obviously he was radicalized. He was unstable. But we do know that he had a rifle. It was hidden in a backpack. He knew where to go. He had a laser rangefinder. He shot well enough to shoot open sights at 151 yards on a person that never holds still. So you have a guy that's kind of like up on stage. Thank goodness he didn't hold still, because had he not moved his head in the very last second, looking back at that diagram of the illegal immigration problem at the border, he'd be dead. 1 centimeter, and the whole entire thing, like we're in civil war right now. That young man knew he had no social media. He knew where he was going. He knew his range. He knew bullet selection. There's a lot of very dangerous things about him as that lone wolf. The next is an enemy of Trump, whether that is, a deep state or, a corporation or a group of people wanting to see him go away. And then last is like the inside job. So I'm going to pose this question, like, what if those 3 things are not mutually exclusive? What if all of them actually complement each other? What if you have people inside the government that detest the former president so much that they would allow incompetent and careless and sloppy people to be around him? What if they've been hiring using DEI hiring practices? If you look at the people that were around President Trump at Butler on Saturday compared to the people that are currently around him now that the national attention is focused on him, they removed the permanent team away from Trump and put a temporary team of women that were overweight, that couldn't holster their weapons, that when they're on stage after the shooting, they're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? They couldn't even move the former president to get him safe. Let's not even talk about the counter sniper team, that knew that a building that had a perfect line of sight to the former president at the podium, that they didn't know if it was another officer climbing up on the hill or up on top of the roof. They PID'd a young man acting suspiciously, and it appears to be the shooter, taking out a laser rangefinder and getting estimations of distance to the podium from that building, but they never confronted him. They had a law enforcement officer climb up a ladder and confront the shooter. The shooter turns around and then he descends back. The whole entire thing just stinks. And when you start going through all of the different, and there are countless, I'm talking like, when I say countless, I was listing them yesterday. There was 100 failures that I was able to point to and enumerate as a security details failure to follow protocol, failure to follow SOPs, failure to plan, failure to execute, failure to lead, failure to engage. The list just went on and on and on. But at what point do hundreds of these start sliding that over here into complicit? If we're going to do a Venn diagram of the lone wolf, enemy of Trump, inside job, right? So we have this one, and this one, lone wolf. Then we have enemy of Trump. And then down here we have the inside job. This right here might be a combination of all of them, where people inside the government were being so reckless and were being intentionally placing people that were inept, allowing something like this. And there's no way you can look at this and be like, this was not allowed to some degree. On the lone wolf side, if you have been radicalizing and calling a person a fascist, calling a person an Adolf Hitler, you're stoking the flames. And then you have social media companies that take those crazy ideas and magnify them even more, right? And then it takes just a few other things to be the final catalyst to take a vulnerable young man and give him just a couple of the tools that he needs, or the just slight push to do something so terrible as try to assassinate a political opponent. And then the enemy of Trump, where someone or a group of people are going to benefit from his assassination. There in the middle is this spectrum where people are inadvertently, or not even inadvertently, they're passive aggressively becoming complicit in this assassination attempt. And I want people to be Americans and do their civil duty of voting but exercise their freedoms in a safe American way. Political violence should be detested by everybody. Any form of language that encourages violence should be repulsive. And I have seen a ton of it since Saturday. Shame on both sides. We have to do better. And shame on the Secret Service. Shame on the Department of Homeland Security. And I hope that former president, regardless of which party, I do not want to see President Biden get assassinated. I do not want to see former President Trump be assassinated. I want no political violence. I want a fair and lawful election where we know without a shadow of a doubt this is the new world leader. And think about this a little bit, mull it over, definitely get in the comments, tell me what you think. I'm not getting into the tactics of it. I know that we could do a full breakdown just on the sniper or just on the security detail or just on the site survey team or just on the mistakes that they made by the handing off portions of security to local law enforcement or just how they were just specifically untrained people with the wrong equipment in the wrong places, how the security perimeter didn't even go more than 100 meters when small arms fire can go out to 50. It just goes on and on and on. You kind of get the idea here. But on this right here, I think that there is a degree of scheming, collusion, and complicitness because of the amount of stupidity, because of how incompetent and careless and sloppy that they were, and the overall negligence of the people on the ground. So, God, I hope we do better. Stay safe, stay free, and no political violence.